There is something inside you, something invisible, something that has influenced nearly every decision you have ever made. It affects your relationships, your emotions, your fears, your ambitions, your insecurities, and yet most people spend their entire lives without truly understanding it. It is called the ego. The ego is not evil, it is not your enemy, but when left unconscious, it quietly begins controlling your life, and the most dangerous part, you often don't realize it's happening. Welcome to the Aura World. Today we are exploring one of the most misunderstood concepts in spirituality and psychology, the ego. What is it? Why it exists? How it controls us? And how awareness can free us from its grip? Because understanding the ego may be one of the most important steps in your spiritual journey. What is the ego? Most people think the ego simply means arrogance, someone who thinks they are better than everyone else. But the ego is much deeper than that. The ego is the identity you create about yourself. It is the story you tell yourself about who you are. Your name, your status, your achievements, your failures, your beliefs, your reputation, your image, all of these become part of the ego's identity. The ego constantly says, "This is me, this is who am I, this is who I must protect," and slowly you begin identifying with that story. How the ego is created. You weren't born with a fully formed ego. As a child, you simply existed. You laughed, cried, explored, experienced life directly. But as you grew older, the world began giving you labels: good, bad, smart, weak, successful, failure, beautiful, average. Over the time, you absorbed these labels and eventually you built an identity around them. The ego became your psychological survival system. Its job was simple: protect the identity you have created. Why the ego suffers? The ego constantly compares, it measures, it judges, it seeks validation, because the ego survives through comparison. It asks, am I better than them? Am I successful enough? Do people like me? Am I important? This creates endless suffering, because no matter how much you achieve, there will always be someone richer, smarter, more attractive, more successful. The ego can never truly rest because it always needs something else to feel complete. The modern world feeds the ego. Never before has the ego had so much fear. Social media constantly encourages comparison. Followers, likes, views, status, attention, validation. People begin measuring their worth through numbers. And without realizing it, the ego becomes addicted. Every notification feels rewarding, every criticism feels threatening, every comparison creates anxiety. The ego constantly asks, how am I being seen, instead of who am I becoming? The ego in relationships. The ego doesn't only affect success, it affects love too. Many arguments aren't about truth, they are about protecting identity. People often fight not because they are right, but because the ego hates being wrong. The ego wants to win, the ego wants validation, the ego wants control, and sometimes the need to be right destroys relationships more than being wrong ever could. The ego's biggest fear. The ego fears one thing more than anything else: change, because change threatens identity. When life changes, the ego feels unsafe. A breakup, job loss, failure, aging, uncertainty, these experiences shake the identity you have built, and the ego resists. It wants everything to remain predictable, familiar, controlled, but life doesn't work that way. Life is constant change. The spiritual view of the ego. Most spiritual traditions don't teach that the ego must be destroyed. Instead, they teach awareness. Because the ego itself isn't the problem, unconscious identification is. The moment you believe, I am my thoughts, I am my status, I am my achievements, you become trapped. Spirituality teaches something different. You have thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. You have emotions, but you are not your emotions. You have an identity, but you are more than your identity. What awakening really means. Many people imagine awakening as some mystical experience, but often awakening begins with a simple realization, the realization that you have been living through automatic patterns, automatic fears, automatic reactions, automatic beliefs, and for the first time you begin observing them instead of becoming them. That observation creates freedom, because what you can observe, you no longer have to obey. Since the ego is controlling you, ask yourself honestly, do you constantly need approval? Do you fear criticism? Do you compare yourself to others? Do you struggle to admit mistakes? Do you feel offended easily? Do you need others to validate your worth? These are not signs of failure, these are signs of unconscious ego activity. And becoming aware of them is the first step toward growth. The freedom beyond the ego. Imagine living without constantly comparing yourself, without needing everyone's approval, without measuring your value through success or failure, without carrying every criticism like a wound. That freedom becomes possible when awareness grows. Because awareness creates space between you and your thoughts, space between you and your reactions, space between you and your ego. And in that space, peace begins to emerge. Final message: the ego is not your enemy, it was created to protect you. But what once protected you can eventually limit you. The goal is not to destroy the ego, the goal is to understand it, to observe it, to stop letting it control every part of your life. Because perhaps the most important journey is not becoming someone new, it's discovering who you are beneath the story you have been telling yourself. If this video helped you to see yourself more clearly, subscribe to the Aura World, because here we explore the deeper truths behind the mind, consciousness, spirituality, and the human experience. And remember, the moment you become aware of the ego, it begins losing its power over you. We will meet in the next video. Thank you.